The bass from the nightclub pulsed through the soles of my worn-out shoes, each beat a reminder that I didn't belong here. I tugged at the hem of my black dress, a thrift store find that looked expensive enough in dim lighting, and tried to blend into the wall of the VIP section. Waitressing at Obsidian wasn't my dream job, but the tips were enough to keep a roof over my head while I finished my degree. Tonight, though, the air felt different, charged with something I couldn't name. "Smile a little, Ellie. The rich guys tip better when you look happy to be here," Marco, my manager, hissed as he passed, balancing a tray of champagne flutes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I plastered on what I hoped was a convincing smile and continued arranging crystal glasses at the reserved table. The velvet rope separating this section from the rest of the club might as well have been an ocean between two worlds. Mine, paycheck to paycheck, student loans, and exhaustion. And theirs, whatever lay beyond the rope. The first warning sign was the sudden change in the club's atmosphere. Like animals before an earthquake, people sensed something before they saw it. The crowd parted, conversations hushed, and even the DJ subtly adjusted the music. I glanced up from my task to see 3 men in immaculate suits entering through the side door, the one regular patrons didn't even know existed. The first 2 were clearly security, earpieces, vigilant eyes, and bodies built like armor. But it was the third man who made my hands tremble slightly as I arranged the last glass. He wasn't particularly tall, maybe 6 feet, but he carried himself as if he owned not just the room, but the ground beneath it. His dark hair was trimmed precisely, framing features that belonged on ancient coins. Sharp jawline, straight nose, and eyes that missed nothing. His suit wasn't flashy, just perfectly tailored to broad shoulders that tapered to a lean waist. I felt his gaze sweep the room like a searchlight before it landed, inexplicably, on me. Something cold slithered down my spine as our eyes met for the briefest moment. I quickly looked down, focusing intently on wiping an invisible spot from the table. When I dared to look up again, he was engaged in conversation with the club owner, who had materialized out of nowhere and was practically bowing. "That's the last time I cover Jessica's shift," I muttered to myself, gathering my empty tray. I had the strangest feeling of being watched, but dismissed it as paranoia. I weaved through the crowded dance floor toward the bar, keeping my tray high. The club had reached that perfect point of the night where inhibitions lowered, but chaos hadn't yet taken over. The crowd was a living, breathing entity, moving to the music in synchronized abandon. 3 martinis and a whiskey. Neat, I told Sam, the bartender, raising my voice over the music. Sam leaned closer, his expression unusually serious. "Table 7 is off limits tonight, Ellie. Andre will handle it." "What? Why?" I glanced back toward the VIP section, where the mysterious man was now seated at table 7, his security positioned discreetly nearby. The club owner was still hovering, laughing too loudly at something that probably wasn't funny. "Just trust me on this," Sam said, already preparing drinks for another order. "Some customers are above our pay grade." My curiosity was piqued, but I knew better than to ask more questions. Obsidian wasn't just a nightclub. There were corners of the business that remained shadowy even to employees. I'd kept my head down for 2 years, focusing on the tips and ignoring the occasional suspicious activities I'd glimpsed. 3 hours later, my feet were screaming in protest, and my fake smile had become a grimace. The club was at its peak capacity, bodies pressed together on the dance floor, the air thick with perfume, sweat, and expensive cologne. I'd just delivered a round of shots to a bachelorette party when I felt a hand slide around my waist. "Dance with me, beautiful," slurred a man with bloodshot eyes and a watch worth more than my car. His grip tightened as I tried to step away. "I'm working," I said firmly, attempting to remove his hand. "Please enjoy your evening, sir." His smile turned ugly. "Playing hard to get? I've seen you watching our table all night." I hadn't been, at least not him. My eyes had occasionally drifted to table 7, where the dark-haired man remained, still as a statue amidst the chaos, occasionally speaking to visitors who approached with obvious deference. But this drunk didn't need to know that. "I need to get back to work," I insisted, more forcefully this time. He yanked me closer, spilling my empty tray. "One dance. I'll make it worth your while." The surrounding crowd was too absorbed in their own revelry to notice my predicament. Security was nowhere to be seen. Panic began to rise in my throat when a deep voice cut through the noise. "There you are." The words weren't shouted, but somehow they penetrated the cacophony around us. The drunk's grip slackened as we both turned toward the voice. The man from table 7 stood behind us, his expression unreadable. Up close, his eyes were a startling gray, like steel reflecting winter light. Despite the club's heat, he looked impeccable. Not a hair out of place, not a drop of sweat visible. "I've been looking for you," he continued, his gaze fixed on me, ignoring the drunk entirely. Confusion swept through me, but some instinct for self-preservation kicked in. "Sorry," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "The crowd's impossible tonight." The drunk looked between us, his alcohol-soaked brain trying to process the situation. "You know each other?" Before I could answer, I felt a warm hand on the small of my back. Not gripping like the drunk's had been, but present, undeniable. "Stay close. He'll think we're together," the stranger said quietly, his breath warm against my ear, sending involuntary shivers down my neck. I nodded slightly, allowing myself to be guided away from the drunk, who was now being approached by one of the security men, who seemed to materialize from the shadows. "Thank you," I said, once we were a safe distance away. I expected him to remove his hand, to nod and return to his important-looking meeting. He didn't. "What's your name?" he asked instead, his voice a low rumble that I felt more than heard over the music. "Ellie?" "Ellie Carter," I answered automatically, then mentally kicked myself for giving my full name to a stranger. "I should get back to work. Your shift ended 10 minutes ago," he replied, glancing at his watch, a subtle timepiece that probably cost more than a year of my tuition. Marco approved it. Alarm bells rang in my head. How did he know my schedule? Who had the authority to adjust it without telling me? I started, but he cut me off with a slight shake of his head. "One drink, as thanks for my timely intervention." It wasn't phrased as a question. I should have made an excuse, should have firmly declined and walked away. Later I would look back on this moment, this single, seemingly innocuous decision, as the crossroads where my life veered irrevocably off course. "One drink," I agreed. He guided me not back to his table in the VIP section, but toward a door I'd never noticed before, partially concealed behind a decorative panel. One of his security men opened it without a word, revealing a private lounge I hadn't known existed in the 2 years I'd worked there. The music from the club was instantly muffled, replaced by the gentle notes of a jazz piece playing from hidden speakers. "You have access to the owner's private lounge?" I asked, unable to keep the surprise from my voice. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. Not quite a smile, but an acknowledgement of my naivety. In a manner of speaking, the room was a study in opulence. Leather sofas, a fully stocked private bar, and windows that looked out over the city skyline. He led me to a seating area near the windows, his hand never leaving my back. "What would you like?" he asked, finally releasing me to gesture toward the bar. "Just water, please." Alcohol seemed like a bad idea in this situation. He raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. Within moments, a man I hadn't noticed placed a crystal glass of water in front of me and a tumbler of amber liquid before the stranger. Then he disappeared as silently as he'd arrived. "You've worked here for 2 years, he stated, watching me over the rim of his glass as he took a sip. It wasn't a question. The room suddenly felt too small, too private. "How do you know that?" "I make it my business to know who works in my establishments." My glass paused halfway to my lips. "Your establishments?" "Among others." He set his drink down, his eyes never leaving mine. "You haven't asked my name." I hadn't. Because deep down, some part of me didn't want to know. Names made things real. "What's your name?" I asked, because there was no going back now. "Nathaniel Vega," he replied, studying my face for a reaction. "But most people call me Nate." The name meant nothing to me, but the way he said it, as if I should recognize it, as if it should mean something, made my stomach tighten. I took a sip of water to hide my unease. "Thank you for your help out there, Mr. Vega. I should probably go now." I moved to stand, but his voice stopped me. "The man who grabbed you is Conrad Fisher. His father is a state senator with aspirations for higher office." His tone was conversational, but there was an undercurrent I couldn't identify. "He has a history of inappropriate behavior with service staff. 3 complaints in the last year alone, all mysteriously withdrawn. I sank back into my seat, unsettled by this information. How do you know that? As I said, I make it my business to know. He leaned forward slightly. He won't bother you again. There was something in his voice, a certainty, a finality, that made me believe him completely and terrified me simultaneously. I need to go, I said, more firmly this time. I have early classes tomorrow. Business administration and finance. He nodded. Impressive choice. My blood ran cold. I'd never mentioned my major to anyone at the club. It was a deliberate separation of my worlds. Student by day, waitress by night. Who are you really? I whispered, fear finally overtaking my attempt at composure. Nathaniel Vega didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table toward me. It was simple. Expensive cream cardstock with just his name and a phone number embossed in black. Someone who values loyalty and intelligence, he finally said. And someone who could offer you something better than serving drinks to entitled children pretending to be men. I didn't take the card. I'm not looking for opportunities of that nature, Mr. Vega. For the first time, he smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his face from intimidating to devastating. I'm offering you a job, Ellie. Your financial knowledge combined with your observational skills would be an asset to my legitimate businesses. The emphasis on legitimate did nothing to reassure me. I stood, gathering my small purse. I need to go. He didn't try to stop me this time, but as I reached the door, his voice followed me. The card, Ellie. Take it. You never know when you might need a friend. I hesitated, then turned back and picked up the card, slipping it into my purse without looking at it again. Goodbye, Mr. Vega. Until next time, he replied with absolute certainty. The cool night air hit me like a slap as I exited the club through the employee entrance, my mind racing. The encounter felt surreal, dreamlike, yet the business card in my purse was tangible proof it had happened. I hailed a taxi, giving the driver my address with shaking hands. It was only as I unlocked the door to my small apartment that I realized my mistake. In my haste to escape, I'd left my jacket in the staff room, with my phone in the pocket. I'd have to retrieve it tomorrow. That night, I dreamed of steel-gray eyes watching me from shadows, and woke with the unshakable feeling that something fundamental had shifted in my world. I couldn't possibly know how right I was. I overslept the next morning, jerking awake to sunlight streaming through the blinds I'd forgotten to close. For a blissful moment, last night felt like a strange dream, until my eyes landed on the cream-colored business card on my nightstand, stark against the chipped paint. Nathaniel Vega. My fingers hovered over it, as if it might burn to touch. In the harsh light of day, my fear seemed melodramatic. He'd helped me with a drunk customer and offered me a job. Unusual, yes, but not inherently sinister. Still, something about him had set off every internal alarm I possessed. You're being ridiculous, I muttered to myself. Rushing to get ready for class, I shoved the card into my desk drawer and tried to forget about it. The finance lecture dragged on, the professor's voice fading into white noise as my mind kept drifting back to the private lounge and those penetrating gray eyes. I forced myself to focus, scribbling notes I knew I'd have to review later. Earth to Ellie. My friend Zoe waved a hand in front of my face as we left class. I've asked you the same question twice. What's going on with you today? I hesitated. Zoe was my closest friend, the only one who knew about my double life as a student and nightclub waitress. But how could I explain last night without sounding paranoid? Just tired, I said, adjusting my backpack. Had a weird night at work. Weird how? She pressed, linking her arm through mine as we navigated the crowded hallway. A customer got handsy, another one stepped in, then offered me a job. The simplified version sounded so mundane when spoken aloud. Zoe's eyebrows shot up. A job? Doing what? Please tell me it's not modeling or some sketchy escort thing. I laughed despite myself. No, something in finance, supposedly. He knew my major somehow. She stopped walking. That's definitely stalker territory, Elle. Did you get his name? The hesitation must have shown on my face because Zoe groaned. You did. You got creepy stalker guy's name and you're considering his offer, aren't you? I'm not, I protested. But I do need to stop by the club before my afternoon class to get my phone. I left it in my jacket last night. Zoe frowned. Want me to come with you? To Obsidian? At noon on a Tuesday? You'd stick out like a sore thumb. I squeezed her arm reassuringly. It'll be fine. The place will be practically empty except for staff. Text me when you get there, and when you leave, she insisted. I agreed, conveniently omitting that my phone was what I was retrieving in the first place. The club looked different in daylight, smaller, seedier, the glamour of the night stripped away to reveal peeling paint and scuffed floors. The front entrance was locked, so I made my way to the staff door, punching in the security code. The silence inside was eerie after the pounding music of the previous night. My footsteps echoed as I walked through the empty club toward the staff room. I was reaching for the door handle when a voice behind me made me jump. Ms. Carter. I spun around to find one of Nathaniel Vega's security men standing there, his posture rigid, expression impassive. I recognized him as the one who had approached the drunk after Vega led me away. You startled me, I said, my heart racing. I'm just here to get my jacket. I left it last night. He nodded once. Mr. Vega anticipated you might return for your belongings. He extended a hand, holding my leather jacket, the second-hand one I'd saved up for months to buy. Your phone is in the pocket. The battery was low, so Mr. Vega took the liberty of having it charged. A chill ran through me. What? He also asked me to give you this. The man produced an envelope from his jacket. And to remind you that his offer remains open. I took my jacket and the envelope with numb fingers. How did you know I'd come now? The man's expression didn't change. Mr. Vega had someone watching your apartment since you left last night. When you exited the university building at 11:42, he calculated you would likely come here before your 2 p.m. class. The casual admission that I was being watched made my blood run cold. That's not okay. You can't just... Mr. Vega would like to invite you to dinner tonight, the man continued as if I hadn't spoken. A car will pick you up at 7. I'm working tonight, I said automatically, though I wasn't. Tuesday was my night off. No, you're not. Again, that absolute certainty. Your schedule has been adjusted. Anger flared, momentarily overriding my fear. Listen, I don't know who your boss thinks he is, but he can't just rearrange my life without my consent. Tell Mr. Vega thank you, but no thank you. For the first time, the man's expression flickered, something like surprise, quickly masked. I'll relay your message. He turned to leave, then paused. Miss Carter, Mr. Vega isn't accustomed to hearing no. Then this will be a novel experience for him, I replied, surprised by my own boldness. Once alone, I checked my phone. It was indeed fully charged, with 3 missed calls from Zoe. As I started to text her that I was fine, I noticed the envelope in my hand. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Inside was a check made out to me for $25,000, along with a handwritten note on heavy cardstock. For your student loans. Consider it an advance. NV. I stared at the check in disbelief. How did he know about my loans? The amount was almost exactly what I owed, a sum that would take me years to pay off at my current rate. The paper trembled in my hand. My first instinct was to tear it up. My second, shamefully, was to deposit it. The weight of my debt was a constant pressure, affecting every decision I made, to be free of it in an instant. No, I said aloud, shoving the check and note back into the envelope. There are no free lunches. I exited the club quickly, checking over my shoulder every few steps, the feeling of being watched making my skin crawl. On campus, I went straight to the financial aid office, where I applied for an additional loan to cover my final semester. It would add to my debt, but it would be clean money with terms I understood. By evening, I was jumpy and exhausted. I'd spent the day looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see one of Vega's men following me. I'd decided to stay at Zoe's apartment, away from my own place where I felt exposed, vulnerable. You're being dramatic, Zoe said, as she placed a frozen pizza in the oven. Rich guy makes inappropriate job offer. You say no. End of story. He had someone watching my apartment, Zoe. He knew my schedule, my major, the exact amount of my student loans. I hugged my knees to my chest on her couch. That's not normal. Okay, that's definitely creepy, she conceded. But what's he going to do? Kidnap you? This isn't a movie. A knock at the door made us both freeze. Zoe recovered first, moving to peer through the peephole. It's just Ray, she said, relief evident as she opened the door for her boyfriend. Ray entered with a 6-pack of beer, kissing Zoe before noticing my tense posture. What's up with you? You look like you've seen a ghost. Ellie has a stalker, Zoe supplied. I don't have a... I began, but was cut off by another knock. All three of us turned toward the door. Ray moved protectively in front of Zoe. Expecting someone else? She shook her head, moving to the peephole again. This time her face paled. It's a man in a suit. I don't recognize him. My stomach dropped. Don't open it. Too late. Zoe had already unlocked the door, opening it just enough to see the visitor. Can I help you? I'm looking for Eleanor Carter. The voice was unfamiliar, not Vega, nor the security man from earlier. There's no one here by that name, Ray said, moving to stand beside Zoe. I know she's here, the man replied calmly. Mr. Vega is waiting in the car. He doesn't like to be kept waiting. I rose from the couch, anger temporarily overpowering fear. I moved to the door, positioning myself between my friends. Tell Mr. Vega I said no. I'm not interested in his job, his money, or his dinner invitation. Please stop following me. The man's face remained expressionless. Mr. Vega anticipated your reluctance. He asked me to inform you that your sister's medical bills in Chicago have been paid in full. He thought you might want to thank him personally. My body went cold. My sister, Maya, had been battling cancer for 2 years, the treatments draining her savings and our parents' retirement fund. I hadn't even told Zoe the full extent of the situation. How did he? I whispered, unable to finish the question. The car is waiting, Ms. Carter. Black Bentley at the curb. He stepped back, clearly expecting me to follow. Zoe grabbed my arm. Ellie, don't. I gently removed her hand. It's okay. I'll call you later. I grabbed my purse, avoiding Ray's concerned look. If I'm not back in 3 hours, call the police, I added, only half joking. The black Bentley was exactly where the man had said, its engine purring softly, windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. The driver opened the rear door, and I slid onto buttery leather seats, my heart hammering against my ribs. Nathaniel Vega sat across from me, as immaculate as he had been the night before, though now in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than a year of my rent. His expression was unreadable as the car pulled away from the curb. That was manipulative, I said without preamble, surprised by my own courage. It was efficient, he countered, his voice even. You needed help with your sister's medical expenses. I provided it. Now you're here, which is where I wanted you. You can't buy people, Mr. Vega. A hint of a smile touched his lips. Everyone has a price, Eleanor. Yours happens to be your sister's health rather than your own financial security. I find that admirable. I folded my arms across my chest. What do you want from me? Direct. I appreciate that. He leaned back, studying me with those unsettling gray eyes. I told you last night, I'm offering you a position within my organization. Your financial acumen would be valuable. What exactly is your organization? I asked. Because normal businesses don't conduct job recruitment by stalking candidates and manipulating them with personal information. Vega didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pressed a button and a panel slid open to reveal a small bar. Drink? No, thank you. I'd like an answer. He poured himself a small measure of amber liquid. I have diverse business interests. Real estate, import, export, entertainment venues like Obsidian. Some ventures require discretion. You're a criminal, I stated flatly. His eyes narrowed slightly, the first crack in his composed facade. I prefer businessman operating outside conventional regulatory frameworks. Despite everything, I almost laughed. That's a very fancy way of saying yes. The car slowed to a stop, and I glanced out the window to see we'd arrived at Terrazza, the most exclusive restaurant in the city. The kind with a 6-month waiting list and no prices on the menu. I believe this conversation would be better continued over dinner, Vega said, nodding to the driver who had appeared to open his door. I'm not hungry, I replied, though my stomach chose that moment to betray me with an audible growl. Vega's mouth quirked. Your body disagrees. Come, Eleanor. One meal. Consider it a proper interview. Stop calling me Eleanor. No one calls me that. I remained seated. Even as he exited the vehicle, he turned back, framed in the doorway. Your sister does. The mention of Maya sent another chill through me. How much do you know about my life? Everything that matters. He extended his hand. Dinner, Ellie. Then you can make your decision with a clear head and a full stomach. I should have refused. Should have demanded to be taken back to Zoe's. Instead, I placed my hand in his and allowed myself to be helped from the car, telling myself it was curiosity, not fascination, that propelled me forward. The restaurant's maitre d' practically bowed as we approached. Mr. Vega, your usual table is ready. We were led to a secluded corner with a stunning view of the city lights. I was acutely aware of my simple jeans and blouse amid the designer clothing surrounding us, but no one gave me a second glance. Vega's presence seemed to render me invisible to judgment. Once seated, he studied me across the table. You're wondering if I had your sister's medical bills paid to manipulate you, or because I'm genuinely concerned for your family. The thought had crossed my mind, I admitted. Which would you prefer the answer to be? He asked, his gaze never wavering. I considered the question. I'd prefer honesty, whatever that might be. Something like approval flickered in his eyes. Both. I need your skills, and I knew this would bring you to me tonight. But I also don't like to see families suffer unnecessarily when I have the means to help. Why me? I asked, the question that had been burning since our first encounter. I'm nobody special. That, he said quietly, is where you're wrong. The waiter appeared with 2 glasses of wine I hadn't seen Vega order. He placed one before each of us, then melted away without asking for our selections. I took the liberty, Vega explained, noting my confused expression. The chef is preparing a special menu for us. Unless you have dietary restrictions? I shook my head, my fingers nervously tracing the stem of the wine glass. You still haven't answered my question. Why me? Vega took a measured sip of his wine before responding. 3 months ago, one of my accountants made a subtle discrepancy in the books at Obsidian. Nothing major. A few $1,000s shifted between accounts. It was a test, designed to identify anyone with both the skill to notice and the integrity to report it. I stared at him, understanding dawning. The inventory discrepancy I found. Yes. He nodded, looking pleased. You not only discovered it, but developed a comprehensive spreadsheet documenting the pattern and presented it to Marco rather than simply reporting the numbers. Most people would have ignored it or assumed a clerical error. I remembered how Marco had dismissed my concerns, telling me to stick to serving drinks and leave the accounting to professionals. I'd been frustrated, but not surprised. Marco works for you, I realized aloud. He reported back. Everyone at Obsidian works for me, Ellie. The club is more than just a business. It's a filtering system. I observe how people behave when they think no one important is watching. The implications of his statement sank in slowly. You've been watching me for 3 months? Longer, he admitted, without a hint of apology. Your application caught my interest. Not many finance students with your GPA choose to waitress in that particular establishment. A chill ran through me as I recalled filling out that application nearly 2 years ago, desperate for a job that would accommodate my class schedule and pay enough to cover my portion of Maya's medical expenses. I searched for the right word. Thorough, Vega supplied. I was going to say invasive, I countered. His expression remained impassive, but I caught a glimmer of something in his eyes, amusement perhaps. In my position, thorough vetting is necessary. I don't apologize for it. The first course arrived, an artful arrangement of seafood I couldn't name, garnished with edible flowers and delicate sauces. Under different circumstances, I might have been intimidated by such a sophisticated dish, but anger and confusion had overridden my social anxiety. What exactly is your position, Mr. Vega? I asked, setting down my fork without tasting the food. You own nightclubs and have security men who follow college students. You know details about my family that I haven't shared with my closest friends. You can apparently pay off medical bills with a phone call. What does that make you? He studied me for a long moment. You're remarkably direct for someone in your position. My position being alone with a man you suspect of being dangerous. His blunt acknowledgement should have terrified me. Instead, I found myself leaning forward. Are you dangerous, Mr. Vega? To some, he conceded, his voice low. Never to you. Something in his tone sent a strange flutter through my chest that I refused to examine. I forced myself to take a bite of food to hide my confusion. It was, predictably, delicious. I oversee a network of businesses and interests across the Northeast, he continued after a moment. Some legitimate by conventional standards, others operating in gray areas of legislation. All profitable. A crime syndicate, I translated. His mouth quirked. If you prefer the dramatic terminology, yes, though most of my operations don't align with what you probably imagine. I don't deal in drugs or human trafficking. I find both reprehensible, but gambling, extortion, money laundering, I pressed. He didn't confirm or deny, simply holding my gaze. Everyone in this restaurant has broken laws, Ellie. The difference is scale and consequence. I glanced around at the other diners. Wealthy couples, business people in expensive suits. A few celebrities I vaguely recognized. That's a convenient justification. It's reality. He took another sip of wine. The man at the table by the window is a hedge fund manager who destroyed thousands of pensions to fund his 5th vacation home. The woman in the red dress cheated hundreds of elderly investors out of their retirement. The distinguished gentleman by the bar sits on the board of a pharmaceutical company that raised the price of life-saving medication by 5,000% last year. His eyes returned to mine. Tell me, who's the criminal? I remained silent, unsure how to respond. The waiter cleared our plates and brought the next course. A perfectly cooked piece of fish with a delicate sauce. What would this job entail exactly? I asked finally. Surprising myself with the question, a smile touched his lips, a genuine one that transformed his face, making him look younger, less forbidding. Financial oversight for several of my legitimate businesses initially. Your degree will be useful, but I'll provide additional training. You'd report directly to me. And if I refuse? The smile vanished. Then you refuse. The check I gave you will be voided, but your sister's medical bills remain paid. Consider it a gift. I blinked, caught off guard by his response. Just like that? No threats? No consequences? I'm not in the habit of forcing unwilling people into my organization, Ellie. It creates unnecessary risks and complications. He cut a perfect bite of fish. However, I think you'll accept. His confidence irked me. What makes you so sure? Because you're bored, he said simply. You're intelligent, observant, and ambitious, trapped in a life too small for your capabilities. Waiting tables for entitled customers while your mind craves challenge. I'm offering you a way out, a path with real responsibility, compensation that reflects your worth, and work that will never be dull. His assessment struck uncomfortably close to home. I had been suffocating in the monotony of my existence, classes where I easily grasped concepts that confounded my peers, nights serving drinks to people who looked through me as if I were furniture, a future of corporate drudgery ahead if I was lucky enough to land a job after graduation. What about my degree? I asked, a tacit acknowledgement that I was considering his offer. You'll complete it. Education is valuable, and if it turns out I'm not suited to your organization? His eyes darkened slightly. I've already determined that you are. The certainty in his voice sent another of those strange flutters through my chest. I ignored it, focusing instead on the practical concerns. Would I need to relocate? Eventually, he nodded. I maintain residences in several cities. My primary home is in Boston, though I spend considerable time here. The conversation paused as our plates were cleared and dessert was served. Something chocolate and intricate that under normal circumstances would have delighted me. Now I barely noticed it. May I ask about my sister's medical bills? I ventured after a moment. His expression softened marginally. Paid in full, including future treatments. I've also arranged for her to see a specialist who has had success with cases like hers. Tears pricked at my eyes unexpectedly. Maya had been fighting so hard, our parents stretching every resource to breaking point. Why would you do that? Because I could, he answered simply. And because it matters to you. I studied his face, searching for deception and finding none. Thank you, I said softly, regardless of what I decide about the job. He inclined his head in acknowledgement. You have questions about the nature of my business. Ask them. I considered carefully. Would I be expected to do anything illegal? No. Your role would be entirely legitimate, with proper documentation, taxes paid, benefits, the works. He set down his fork. I compartmentalize my operations, Ellie. You would not be involved in anything that could compromise your future. But I would know about those other operations. Eventually, yes. His gaze was steady. Knowledge is inevitable in proximity. But participation is a choice. I processed this, turning the implications over in my mind. What happens if I accept, then change my mind later? A shadow crossed his face. That would depend on what you've learned and what you intended to do with that knowledge. The implicit threat hung between us. I nodded, understanding the boundaries he was establishing. And my personal life would remain your own, with certain security precautions. He hesitated, something I hadn't seen him do before. Though I should make it clear that I would not welcome romantic entanglements with individuals who might pose security risks. Heat crept into my cheeks. Are you dictating who I can date? I'm expressing a preference for your safety and that of my organization. His tone was businesslike, but his eyes had hardened. Dating is a vulnerability I cannot afford in my close associates. I see. I took a deliberate sip of wine. And what about you, Mr. Vega? Do you follow your own rules regarding entanglements? The question was forward, inappropriate, and I regretted it as soon as it left my mouth. To my surprise, he laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face again. I follow all my rules, Ellie. It's why I'm still alive. He studied me with renewed interest. But I'll admit, you're testing my resolve on that particular policy. The implication sent a jolt through me that I refused to acknowledge as pleasure. Before I could formulate a response, his phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression immediately shifting to something colder, more distant. Excuse me, he said, standing. I need to take this. Please, finish your dessert. He moved away from the table, speaking quietly into the phone. I took the opportunity to gather my thoughts, which were scattered and contradictory. Part of me was screaming to run, to pay off my loans through conventional means, to struggle through the next few years as I had the last. But another part, a part I barely recognized, was exhilarated by the possibilities Vega represented. A door opening to a world I'd only glimpsed through the windows. He returned a few minutes later, his face now a composed mask. I apologize, but I need to cut our evening short. There's a situation that requires my attention. Of course, I said, setting down my napkin. Thank you for dinner. My driver will take you home. He paused. I'd prefer you return to your apartment rather than your friend's. It's more secure than you might think. The reminder that he knew where I'd been sent a chill down my spine. How considerate, I replied, unable to keep the sarcasm from my voice. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I need your decision by tomorrow evening, Ellie. The position needs to be filled quickly. That doesn't give me much time to consider life-altering decisions, I pointed out as we exited the restaurant. The cool night air carried the scent of approaching rain, and I shivered slightly in my light jacket. Immediately, Vega removed his suit jacket and draped it over my shoulders. The fabric was warm from his body, carrying the faint scent of expensive cologne and something uniquely him. The gesture was so unexpected, so normal, that for a moment he seemed like any other man on a dinner date. Life rarely gives us the luxury of extended deliberation for important choices, he said quietly. We decide with the information available and live with the consequences. His driver appeared with the car, opening the door for me. Vega surprised me again by taking my hand, his thumb brushing across my knuckles in a touch so light I might have imagined it. Until tomorrow, Ellie. I slid into the car, my skin tingling where he had touched it. As the vehicle pulled away, I saw him still standing there, watching me leave, a solitary figure commanding the sidewalk as if it were his personal domain. The car ride was silent, the driver showing no interest in conversation. I stared out the window at the passing city lights, trying to make sense of the evening and my own conflicted reactions. When we arrived at my apartment building, the driver insisted on escorting me to my door. I was too mentally exhausted to argue. He checked my apartment quickly, nodding in satisfaction before leaving me alone. I locked the door behind him, leaning against it and closing my eyes. Only then did I realize I was still wearing Vega's jacket. I slipped it off, draping it over a kitchen chair, suddenly overwhelmed by the enormity of the choice before me. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "Are you alive? Do I need to call the police?" I quickly typed back, "I'm fine. Home now. We'll explain tomorrow." Exhaustion swept over me, but I knew sleep would be elusive. I moved to my laptop, opening a new document. On one side, I typed reasons to accept. On the other, reasons to refuse. Under accept, I listed financial security, Maya's medical bills, career advancement, new experiences, challenge. Under refuse, I wrote illegal activities, danger, loss of freedom, moral compromise. I stared at the lists until the words blurred. The logical choice was obvious. No job was worth entangling myself with a criminal organization, regardless of how legitimate my specific role might be. Yet something kept me from committing to that decision. It wasn't just the money, though that was certainly a factor. It was the way Vega had seen me, really seen me, when I'd been invisible to everyone else for so long. The potential he recognized in me that no one else had bothered to notice. My phone buzzed again, an unknown number. "Your sister's first appointment with Dr. Levine is scheduled for next Thursday at 10 a.m. Transportation has been arranged. NV." I stared at the message, a lump forming in my throat. I hadn't even given him my number, yet here he was, already arranging Maya's care with the top specialist in the country. Before I could talk myself out of it, I typed back, "Thank you." The response came immediately. "You're welcome, Ellie. Sleep well." I set the phone down, my decision crystallizing with unexpected clarity. I was going to accept his offer, knowing full well I was stepping into a world I didn't fully understand, with a man whose very existence was shrouded in danger and power. What I didn't yet understand was that by morning, events would unfold that would make my decision irrelevant, because Nathaniel Vega had already decided for both of us. I woke to the sound of my phone ringing, the bright screen cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. It was 4:38 a.m. My sister's name flashed on the display. "Maya?" I answered, my voice thick with sleep. "What's wrong?" "Ellie." Her voice was breathless, excited rather than distressed. "I just got a call from Dr. Levine's office." "Dr. Levine?" "As in the oncologist who wrote that book I was telling you about. They said they've reviewed my case and want to start a new treatment protocol next week. All expenses covered by some medical foundation." She paused. "Did you do something?" I sat up, fully awake now, Vega's text message from last night flashing through my mind. I may have met someone who wanted to help. A someone who has connections to the leading cancer specialist in the country and access to a medical foundation with deep pockets. Maya's tone was skeptical. "Ellie, what's going on?" I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "It's complicated. I might be taking a new job. What kind of job comes with miracle medical interventions for your family?" The excitement in her voice had shifted to concern. "Are you in trouble?" "No," I said quickly, though the truth was more nuanced. "It's a financial position with a private investment group. The owner is very wealthy and apparently believes in my potential. And he just decided to pay for a stranger's cancer treatment out of the goodness of his heart?" Maya wasn't buying it. She'd always been the more practical sister, seeing through pretenses with unsettling accuracy. I sighed. "He did it because he knew it would matter to me. It's a recruiting tactic, I guess." "Ellie." Her voice dropped. "This sounds not normal. What's this man's name?" I hesitated again. "Nathaniel Vega." The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. "As in, Nate Vega, the real estate developer? You know him?" I asked, surprised. "I know of him," she corrected. "His company restored that historic theater district in Boston last year. It was all over the news. Billionaire with the Midas touch, very private, rumored connections to old Boston families." There were some controversies about zoning permits being expedited. I sank back against my pillows, processing this information. Vega had presented himself as a businessman with some illegal operations, but he downplayed the extent of his legitimate empire. If Maya recognized his name from mainstream news, he was more prominent than I'd realized. "The treatment," I said softly. "It's legitimate, right? Dr. Levine is the best in the field." Maya confirmed. "The treatment plan they outlined is cutting-edge but sound. This could be..." Her voice broke slightly. "This could be what we've been hoping for." The lump returned to my throat. "Then take it. Whatever happens with this job, the treatment is yours," he promised. "I don't like the idea of you getting involved with someone powerful enough to make these kinds of arrangements, Ellie. It feels like there are strings attached." "There probably are," I admitted, "but I'm going into it with my eyes open." We talked a while longer, Maya extracting a promise that I would be careful and call her daily. By the time we hung up, pale morning light was filtering through my blinds. I checked my phone. No messages from Vega, but a missed call from Zoe. I texted her that I'd call later, then dragged myself to the shower. As the hot water cascaded over me, I tried to organize my thoughts. The fact that Vega was publicly known changed things, though I wasn't sure exactly how. It meant he was more established, more legitimate than I'd initially believed, but it also meant he had more to lose if his illegal operations were exposed. I was drying my hair when a knock at my door startled me. Wrapping my robe tightly around myself, I approached cautiously and peered through the peephole. A young woman stood there, holding a large box and a garment bag. She was professionally dressed in a tailored pantsuit, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. "Ms. Carter?" she called through the door. "My name is Vanessa Liu. Mr. Vega sent me." I hesitated before opening the door just enough to see her properly. "What is this?" She smiled politely. "Mr. Vega thought you might appreciate some options for today's meeting." "What meeting?" I hadn't agreed to anything beyond giving him my decision. "The introductory orientation at Vega Holdings," she replied, as if this were common knowledge. "Your new employment paperwork needs processing, and Mr. Vega thought you might want to tour the offices before you start on Monday." The presumption was breathtaking. I hadn't even formally accepted the position, yet he was already scheduling my first day. "I haven't accepted the job yet," I said, irritation rising. Vanessa's smile didn't waver, but something flickered in her eyes, surprise perhaps. "I see. Well, Mr. Vega requested that I deliver these items regardless." She extended the box and garment bag. "May I come in?" Against my better judgment, I opened the door wider and allowed her to enter. She placed the items carefully on my small dining table. "The car will arrive at 9 a.m., she continued, checking her slim gold watch. "That gives you just over 2 hours to prepare. Inside the box, you'll find appropriate accessories and the address for Vega Holdings. The garment bag contains several options for professional attire." "I have classes today," I protested. "They've been covered." Her tone made it clear this wasn't up for discussion. "Your professors have been informed you're interviewing for a prestigious internship." They were quite supportive, especially given the recommendation letter from Mr. Vega. My temper flared. He can't just rearrange my life without consulting me. Vanessa regarded me with something like sympathy. "You'll find that Mr. Vega operates with remarkable efficiency once he's made a decision. The job is yours if you want it, Ms. Carter. Today is merely a formality to acquaint you with your new environment." After she left, I stood staring at the packages, torn between outrage at Vega's presumption and curiosity about their contents. Finally, curiosity won. I unzipped the garment bag to find 3 outfits: a charcoal pantsuit, a navy dress with a matching blazer, and a cream blouse with a black pencil skirt. All were clearly designer pieces, the fabric rich and substantial beneath my fingers. The box contained accessories, a leather portfolio, a sleek watch, subtle gold jewelry, and a pair of black leather heels that looked both elegant and miraculously comfortable. Tucked into the portfolio was a business card for Vega Holdings with an address in the financial district. I sat heavily on my couch, staring at these offerings. The presumption was infuriating. Yet I couldn't deny the thrill that ran through me at the thought of stepping into this new world, even if just for a day. What harm could there be in simply touring the offices? I could still refuse the position afterward. "You're rationalizing," I muttered to myself. Nevertheless, at 8:55 a.m., I was dressed in the navy dress and blazer, my hair styled more carefully than usual, the delicate gold watch on my wrist. I looked like a different person in my small bathroom mirror, polished, professional, confident. The car arrived precisely at 9 a.m., not the Bentley from last night, but a sleek black SUV with tinted windows. The driver opened the door for me without a word, and I slid into the plush leather interior, half expecting to find Vega waiting. Instead, I was alone for the drive. Vega Holdings occupied the top 10 floors of a gleaming downtown skyscraper. The security in the lobby was extensive. ID checks, metal detectors, and guards who looked more military than civilian. I was escorted to a private elevator that opened only with a key card, which my guide provided. Mr. Vega is in meetings until 11, the woman explained as we ascended. In the meantime, Ms. Liu will show you around and begin your paperwork. Vanessa was waiting when the elevator doors opened onto the 45th floor. The reception area was a study in understated luxury, marble floors, original artwork, and floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city. "Welcome to Vega Holdings," she said, extending her hand. "How was your commute?" "Smoother than the subway," I replied, taking in my surroundings with what I hoped was subtle observation rather than obvious awe. She smiled. "Let's start with a tour, shall we?" The next hour passed in a blur as Vanessa led me through the executive floors. The offices were impressive, state-of-the-art technology seamlessly integrated with elegant design. The staff we encountered were universally well-dressed, efficient, and deferential upon learning I was Mr. Vega's new financial analyst. "This would be your office," Vanessa said, opening a door to reveal a corner space with 2 walls of windows and modern furnishings. It was easily 4 times the size of my entire apartment. Of course, you'll customize it to your preferences once you start. "It's overwhelming," I admitted. "You'll adjust quickly," she assured me. "Now, let's review your contract while we wait for Mr. Vega." The paperwork was as impressive as the office. A starting salary that made me momentarily lightheaded, comprehensive benefits, housing allowance, car service, and performance bonuses that could double my base compensation. Everything appeared legitimate, with proper tax withholding and even a 401k plan. "These benefits seem excessive for an entry-level position," I noted, scanning the documents with growing disbelief. "Mr. Vega values talent and loyalty," Vanessa replied smoothly. "He believes in investing in people with potential." She checked her watch. "Mr. Vega should be finishing his meeting soon. Would you like coffee while we wait?" I nodded, and she stepped out, leaving me alone with the contract. I read it carefully, looking for hidden clauses or traps, but found none. It was a straightforward, if extraordinarily generous, employment agreement. The door opened, and I looked up expecting Vanessa with coffee. Instead, Nathaniel Vega stood there, today in a navy suit that complemented my dress so precisely it seemed deliberate. His eyes took in my appearance with obvious approval. "The navy suits you," he said, closing the door behind him. I thought it might. I set down the contract. "You seem very certain I'm taking this job, Mr. Vega, aren't you?" he countered, moving to sit across from me. "You're here, dressed in clothes I provided, reviewing a contract most recent graduates would sign without reading." His confidence should have irritated me. But he wasn't wrong. I had already decided, despite my protestations to the contrary. "I have conditions," I said, straightening my shoulders. A smile touched his lips. "I'm listening." "I finished my degree. No more rescheduling my classes without consultation." He nodded. "Reasonable. Anything else?" "I want to understand exactly what I'm getting into. No surprises about the nature of your business 6 months from now." His expression turned serious. "I can't give you all the details at once, Ellie. Partial knowledge is safer for you initially. But I promise transparency at a pace that protects both of us." I considered this. "Fair enough." "Third condition. My personal life remains mine. You don't dictate who I see or where I go in my free time." Something flickered in his eyes, a darkness that came and went so quickly I might have imagined it. "Your personal safety is non-negotiable. Certain individuals would present security risks. Beyond that, your time is your own. And my family's medical care continues regardless of my employment status." I added. If this doesn't work out, Maya's treatment isn't affected. Agreed, he said without hesitation. Your sister's care is guaranteed. Unconditionally. I took a deep breath. Then yes, Mr. Vega, I accept your offer. The smile that spread across his face was genuine, transforming his features from intimidating to almost boyishly pleased. Excellent decision, Ellie. And please, call me Nate. The formality of Mr. Vega had been a small barrier, a way of maintaining distance. Using his first name felt like crossing a threshold I couldn't retreat from. Nate, I echoed, testing the familiarity of it. He stood, buttoning his jacket with an elegant, practiced motion. Let's make it official, shall we? I signed the contract with a strange mix of trepidation and exhilaration. Vega, Nate, watched me with that intense gray gaze, making the simple act feel momentous, irreversible. Welcome to Vega Holdings, Ellie, he said when I finished. I believe this is the beginning of a very productive partnership. The rest of the day passed in a whirlwind of introductions, security clearances, and technology setups. I was issued a company phone, laptop, and ID badge with access to specific floors of the building. Vanessa remained my guide, explaining procedures and protocols with brisk efficiency. By late afternoon, my head was spinning with information. Nate had disappeared after our meeting, apparently called away to a business emergency, but Vanessa assured me he would be in touch soon. Your apartment lease expires next month, she mentioned casually as we waited for my car. Mr. Vega has arranged temporary accommodations until you decide on a permanent residence. The company maintains several properties for executives. Again, that presumption that my life was now his to arrange. But this time, my irritation was tempered with reluctant appreciation. My apartment was a cramped studio with unreliable heating, and a persistent mold problem in the bathroom. The thought of living somewhere that matched the elegance of the Vega Holdings offices was undeniably appealing. The car arrived to take me home, the driver as silent as before. As we pulled away from the curb, I caught sight of a familiar black Bentley parked across the street. Though I couldn't see through the tinted windows, I knew instinctively that Nate was watching, making sure I left safely. The knowledge should have felt intrusive. Instead, it sent a peculiar warmth through me that I didn't want to examine too closely. Back in my apartment, I changed into comfortable clothes and tried to process the day's events. My phone, my personal one, not the new company device, buzzed with messages from Zoe demanding updates. I texted back that I was fine and would explain everything tomorrow. As I was heating leftover pasta for dinner, a knock at my door startled me. This time, the peephole revealed a courier holding a small package. Delivery for Eleanor Carter, he announced when I opened the door. The package was wrapped in heavy cream paper, secured with a black ribbon. No sender was identified. I thanked the courier and closed the door, turning the package over in my hands before carefully unwrapping it. Inside was a small velvet box. My heart skipped as I opened it, revealing a delicate gold necklace with a simple pendant. A small key crafted from what appeared to be white gold or platinum, inset with a tiny diamond. A note card accompanied it, written in a strong, slanting hand. To new beginnings and opened doors. Dinner tomorrow, 8 p.m. N. I lifted the necklace, the key pendant catching the light. The symbolism wasn't subtle, a key to a new life, a new world he was unlocking for me. Or perhaps a reminder that I now had access to things previously beyond my reach. I fastened it around my neck, the metal cool against my skin. As I looked at my reflection, the woman staring back seemed different already. Not just the external polish of the designer clothes from earlier, but something in the eyes. A recognition of crossing a threshold, of choices made that couldn't be unmade. My phone buzzed with a text from the unknown number. Nate's number. It suits you. I moved to my window, scanning the street below. No black Bentley, no obvious security, yet the message had come immediately after I'd put on the necklace. I touched the key pendant, a chill running through me. Are you watching me? I texted back. The reply came instantly, always. The single word should have terrified me. Instead, it sent that strange warmth through me again, along with something darker, more complex. A thrill I didn't want to acknowledge. I was playing with fire, and some part of me, a part I barely recognized, welcomed the burn. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of transitions. By day, I trained at Vega Holdings, absorbing financial systems and corporate structures with an ease that surprised even me. By night, I packed my meager belongings for the move to what Vanessa called temporary accommodations, a penthouse apartment in a building Nate owned downtown. I'd expected resistance from Zoe when I told her about the job, but after her initial skepticism, she'd been cautiously supportive. "Just promise you'll get out if it feels wrong," she'd said during our coffee meetup. "And keep in regular contact so I know you're alive." Nate himself remained an enigma, present yet elusive. We'd had dinner twice more since that first night, each time in private dining rooms of exclusive restaurants. The conversations were mainly professional, focused on my training and integration into Vega Holdings. Yet undercurrents of something else rippled beneath the surface, in the way his eyes lingered on mine, the occasional brush of his hand against mine when passing documents, the text messages that came at odd hours, asking if I was comfortable, if I needed anything. It was during our third dinner that the carefully constructed professional facade began to crack. "You've impressed everyone," Nate said, as we finished our entrees in a candlelit private room overlooking the harbor. "Harrison says you've already identified inefficiencies in our accounting systems that his team missed." I smiled, pleased by the praise. "The redundancies were subtle but significant. You could save about $4 million annually by restructuring those departments. I didn't hire you to save me money, Ellie." His voice had dropped to that lower register that seemed to resonate somewhere beneath my ribcage, though I appreciate the initiative. "Why did you hire me?" I asked boldly, the question that had simmered since our first meeting. "The truth." Nate studied me for a long moment, swirling the wine in his glass. "Because you see what others miss. Because you're intelligent enough to be dangerous, but ethical enough not to abuse it. Because you're loyal to those you care about." He paused. "And because I've never met anyone quite like you." Heat crept into my cheeks. "You barely know me. I know enough." His gaze was intense, unapologetic. "You underestimate how revealing your actions are. The way you protected your drunk friend at a party last year, even though she'd been dismissive of you earlier. How you tutored struggling classmates without accepting payment. The extra food you brought to the homeless man outside your building every Tuesday." I stared at him, unnerved by these intimate details of my life casually laid bare. "That's invasive?" he supplied, echoing our earlier conversation. "Perhaps, but necessary to understand who you truly are." "And who am I, in your assessment?" I challenged, unsettled by his surveillance yet strangely flattered by his attention. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Someone rare, Ellie. Someone worth protecting." The air between us changed, charged with something beyond professional interest or casual attraction. I broke eye contact first, reaching for my water glass to steady my hands. "Tomorrow you move into the Archer building," he said, seamlessly shifting to practicalities. "Security protocols there are extensive. You'll have a dedicated parking space in the secured garage, though I recommend using the car service for now." I nodded, grateful for the return to business. "Vanessa mentioned restricted access to certain floors?" "Yes. Your credentials allow entry to the residential floors, common areas, and your specific unit. The top 3 floors are private." "Your floors," I guessed. His mouth quirked. "One of my residences, yes." The knowledge that he would be in the same building sent another of those unsettling thrills through me. I pushed it aside, focusing on logistics. "Will I need special clearance for guests?" Something flickered in his eyes, a momentary darkness. "All visitors must be approved by security in advance. It's for everyone's protection, Ellie." "Even Zoe?" I asked, testing the boundaries. "Even family," he confirmed. "Though I've already added your sister and Ms. Chen to the approved list." Of course he had. Nate was always several steps ahead, anticipating my needs, removing obstacles before I encountered them. It was both comforting and disquieting. The following afternoon, I stood in my empty apartment for the last time, a strange melancholy washing over me. This cramped, flawed space had been mine. The first place I'd lived alone, a symbol of my independence. Leaving it felt significant, irrevocable. My phone buzzed with a text from Nate. "The car is waiting. Is everything all right?" I took a final glance around the bare walls. Just saying goodbye. His response was immediate. Some goodbyes are necessary for better beginnings. Philosophical Nate was surprisingly endearing. I smiled despite myself and locked the door behind me, dropping the key in the landlord's mailbox as instructed. The Archer Building was a gleaming tower of glass and steel in the heart of downtown, its lobby more reminiscent of a luxury hotel than an apartment building. The security staff greeted me by name, efficient and professional as they processed my identification and explained the biometric access systems. "Mr. Vega requested that you call when you arrived," the concierge informed me. "He'd like to personally ensure your accommodations are satisfactory." 20 minutes later, I was standing in a penthouse that made the Vega Holdings offices look austere by comparison. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased panoramic city views, the space tastefully furnished in neutrals with occasional bold accents. Fresh flowers adorned multiple surfaces, their scent subtle but welcoming. I was exploring the state-of-the-art kitchen when the private elevator chimed softly. Nate stepped out, today in casual attire, dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that somehow looked as expensive as his suits. "What do you think?" he asked, watching me take in my new surroundings. "It's beautiful," I admitted, "but massive for one person. This is temporary housing?" He smiled, moving further into the space. "I believe in appropriate environments for valuable assets. Is that what I am? An asset?" The question emerged more vulnerably than I'd intended. Nate approached slowly, stopping just close enough that I could detect the faint scent of his cologne. "You are many things, Ellie. Asset is merely the most professional term." My pulse quickened at his proximity. "And the unprofessional terms?" His eyes darkened. "Would cross several boundaries I've established." The tension between us was palpable, electric. I should have stepped back, maintained the professional distance he himself had referenced. Instead, I found myself asking, "What boundaries are those exactly?" He studied me for a long moment, something fierce and restrained in his gaze, ones that protect you from complications you're not ready for. "Shouldn't I decide what I'm ready for?" I challenged. His jaw tightened. "Not in this. Not yet." He stepped back, creating distance between us. "I've arranged for dinner to be delivered at 7. The kitchen is fully stocked if you prefer to cook. Security has my private number if you need anything." He moved toward the elevator. "I have meetings until late tonight. We'll review your first full portfolio assignment tomorrow." And just like that, the professional mask was back in place. The moment, whatever it had been, broken. "Nate," I called as he reached the elevator. He paused, looking back at me. "Thank you for all of this." Something complex passed across his features. "You've earned it, Ellie. Remember that." After he left, I explored my new home more thoroughly, discovering thoughtful details that spoke of careful preparation, my preferred coffee already stocked, the bookshelves containing several titles from my wish list, the bathroom supplied with the exact brands of toiletries I used. The master closet was fully furnished with a wardrobe I could never have afforded. Designer pieces in my size, ranging from casual to formal, all in colors and styles I would have chosen myself. A note card on the dressing table read simply, "Appropriate attire for your position. No obligation to use, if not to your taste. N." It was overwhelming, this seamless transition into a life of luxury. Part of me felt I should resist, maintain some independence by refusing these gifts, but another part recognized the practicality. I needed to look the part for my new role, and my student wardrobe was woefully inadequate. As promised, dinner arrived precisely at 7. A gourmet meal from what I recognized as one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. I ate alone at the massive dining table, the silence of the penthouse both peaceful and slightly disorienting after years in my noisy apartment building. I was washing my wine glass when my company phone rang, an unlisted number. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Ms. Carter?" The voice was unfamiliar, male, tense. "This is Samuel Richardson, Mr. E. Vega's head of security. There's a situation requiring your immediate attention." My heart rate spiked. "What's happened? Is Nate okay?" "Mr. Vega has been involved in an incident. He's asking for you specifically." Richardson's tone was clipped, professional. "A car is already en route to your building. ETA 3 minutes. Please be in the lobby." What kind of incident? I pressed, already moving toward the bedroom to change from my lounge clothes. I'm not at liberty to discuss details on this line. Mr. Vega will explain when you arrive. The call ended abruptly. I dressed quickly in jeans and a sweater, grabbing my purse and both phones. My mind raced with possibilities. A business emergency, a security breach, perhaps something related to the shadowy side of his operations that I'd been kept insulated from. The black SUV was waiting as promised, a stone-faced driver holding the door open without greeting. We drove in silence through the night-darkened city, eventually turning onto a quiet street lined with warehouses near the harbor district. Alarm bells began ringing in my mind. This wasn't a hospital or a police station. If Nate were injured, why bring me here? Where exactly are we going? I asked, tension coiling in my stomach. Mr. Vega is inside. The driver pulled up to a nondescript building, its windows dark. 3rd floor. They're expecting you. Every instinct screamed danger, yet concern for Nate overrode my caution. I entered the building, finding a freight elevator that creaked ominously as it ascended. The 3rd floor was dimly lit, a single bulb illuminating a long corridor with several doors. At the far end, light spilled from beneath a door. I approached cautiously, heart hammering against my ribs. Before I could knock, it swung open, revealing a large open space that appeared to be a converted factory floor. Industrial lights cast harsh shadows across concrete floors. Nate stood in the center of the room, unharmed, his posture rigid with tension. Blood stained the cuff of his white dress shirt. 3 other men were present, 2 I recognized as his security team, and a 3rd tied to a chair, his face bloodied, head hanging limply forward. Ellie. Nate's voice was controlled, but his eyes blazed with something dangerous. I apologized for the deception. There was no other way to be certain. Fear and confusion battled within me. Certain of what? What is this? A necessary test. He gestured toward the bound man. This is Vincent Maroney. Until recently, he handled certain financial transactions for an associate of mine. 3 days ago, he was approached by federal agents. Yesterday, he agreed to wear a wire. I stared at the injured man, horror washing over me. What have you done to him? Nothing permanent, Nate replied coldly. The question is, what happens next? Understanding dawned with sickening clarity. Why am I here? Because I need to know where your loyalties lie, Ellie. He moved toward me, his movements precise, controlled. Vincent made a choice that endangers people I protect. In my world, such choices have consequences. You're going to kill him, I whispered. The reality of Nate's world finally, truly sinking in. That depends on you. My blood ran cold. On me? Nate's expression was unreadable. You have 3 options. 1. You can leave now. Return to your apartment, and tomorrow you'll be relocated to a position in our legitimate operations in another city. You'll never see me again, but your sister's care will continue as promised. I swallowed hard. 2. You stay and observe. Prove you can be trusted with the reality of my business. My voice trembled. And 3? Something shifted in his eyes, a flicker of what might have been regret. There is no 3, Ellie. Not really. Because I already know you can't do either one and live with yourself afterward. The man in the chair groaned, beginning to regain consciousness. One of the security men moved toward him, but Nate raised a hand, stopping him. This is the reality behind the offices and penthouse apartments, Nate continued, his voice softer now. This is what maintains the empire. I wanted to protect you from it, but circumstances have forced my hand. I felt sick, lightheaded. You brought me here to what? See if I could stomach murder? Was any of it real? The job, the apartments, I cut myself off, unable to name the electricity that had sparked between us. All of it was real, he said fiercely. Your talent, your position, he paused. My regard for you. But this is also real, Ellie. This is the foundation everything else is built upon. Let him go, I said suddenly, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. Nate's eyebrows rose. That's not one of the options. Make it one. I stepped closer, fear giving way to a strange calm. You said you value my intelligence. Here it is. Killing him solves nothing. The FBI already knows he was working with them. If he disappears, they'll know exactly who is responsible. They'll suspect. They won't be able to prove it, one of the security men interjected. I ignored him, keeping my focus on Nate. There are smarter ways to handle this. Ways that don't involve crossing a line you can never uncross. What do you suggest? Nate asked, his tone neutral, but his eyes intense, watching me. My mind raced. Feed him false information, use him to mislead the investigation. Make it clear to the FBI that their informant has been compromised without eliminating him. It undermines their case while giving you time to clean up whatever operations he might have knowledge of. The room fell silent as Nate considered my words. The injured man raised his head groggily, fear dawning in his eyes as he took in his surroundings. An interesting proposition, Nate said finally. Risky. Less risky than murder, I countered, and more profitable in the long run. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Always the financial analyst. He turned to his security team, issuing quiet instructions I couldn't hear. One of them nodded and left the room, while the other began untying the captive. Nate returned to me, taking my elbow and guiding me toward the door. You continue to surprise me, Ellie. Is that good or bad? I asked, still trembling slightly from the adrenaline. It's unprecedented, he replied as we stepped into the hallway, leaving the others behind. No one else would have dared suggest an alternative. They would have chosen to leave or to stay silent. I'm not everyone else, I said quietly. His eyes softened fractionally. No, you're not. In the car back to the Archer building, Nate sat beside me, his presence both comforting and unsettling after what I'd witnessed. Neither of us spoke until we were nearly home. I didn't want you to see that side of things so soon, he finally said. But Vincent's betrayal accelerated the timeline. I turned to face him. Would you have killed him if I hadn't been there? He considered the question with surprising openness. Probably. It would have been cleaner, simpler. But not smarter, I said. No, he acknowledged. Not smarter. When we reached the building, he escorted me to my door. I hesitated before entering, suddenly uncertain of everything. I understand if you want to take option 1, Nate said quietly. After tonight, no one would blame you. I studied his face, the sharp angles softened by the dim hallway lighting, the gray eyes that revealed more than he probably intended. Despite everything, I still felt that pull toward him, that inexplicable connection that had sparked from our first meeting. I'm staying, I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. But I have a new condition. His expression remained neutral, but tension had crept into his shoulders. Which is? No more tests, no more deception. If we're going to do this, whatever this is, it has to be with honesty, even when the truth is ugly. Something like relief crossed his features. Agreed. I unlocked my door but didn't open it. And one more thing. Those boundaries you mentioned earlier, we need to discuss those. Properly. His eyes darkened. Ellie. Not tonight, I clarified. I've had enough revelations for one evening. But soon, he nodded slowly. Soon, he agreed, his voice lower, rougher. I entered my apartment, closing the door between us with a soft click that felt strangely significant. Leaning against it, I closed my eyes, processing the night's events. I should have been terrified, should have been packing my bags and running as far from Nathaniel Vega as possible. Instead, I felt strangely calm, as if pieces of a puzzle had finally clicked into place. I understood now what I was involved in. The true nature of Nate's empire, the darkness that shadowed his world. And despite everything, I wasn't running. 6 months later, I stood at the window of a different penthouse, this one in Boston, overlooking the harbor where lights danced on dark water. My role at Vega Holdings had evolved beyond financial analysis to become something more complex, more integral. I had proven my value not just in identifying efficiencies, but in providing perspectives Nate's other advisors wouldn't dare offer. The boundaries we'd discussed that night had shifted gradually, inevitably, until they dissolved entirely 3 months ago. Now, Nate's dress shirts hung beside mine in the closet. His scent lingered on the pillows, and the key necklace he'd given me on that first day had been joined by a more significant piece of jewelry, a platinum band set with a single flawless diamond. Deep thoughts? His voice came from behind me, followed by strong arms encircling my waist, pulling me against his chest. I leaned into him, watching our reflection in the darkened window, just reflecting on how much has changed. His lips brushed my temple. Any regrets? I turned in his arms, studying the face that had become as familiar to me as my own. Nathaniel Vega was still a complicated man, dangerous to his enemies, fiercely protective of those he considered his. The empire he'd built straddled worlds both legitimate and shadow, and I now moved between them with increasing confidence, my own moral compass gradually adjusting to this new reality. We had established boundaries of a different sort, lines I wouldn't cross, operations I wouldn't touch. He respected these limitations, valuing my perspective precisely because it differed from the yes-men who surrounded him. In turn, I'd learned to accept the necessary darkness of his world, to understand the complex code of honor that governed his decisions. No regrets, I answered honestly. Though I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I'd never said, "Stay close, he'll think we're together," to that stranger in a nightclub. Nate smiled, the private smile reserved only for me. "I would have found you eventually. Some things are inevitable, Ellie." As his lips met mine, I reflected that he was probably right. From that first moment when his gray eyes had met mine across a crowded room, some part of me had recognized a truth I hadn't been ready to acknowledge. That Nathaniel Vega and I were always destined to collide, to challenge each other, to become entangled in ways neither of us could have predicted. "Stay close, he'll think we're together." Words spoken to a stranger who turned out to be anything but. Words that had changed the course of my life irrevocably, leading me from a world of shadows and uncertainty into one of power and possibility. And despite everything, the danger, the moral compromises, the occasional brush with darkness, I wouldn't change a single moment of our complicated, extraordinary journey.